This is your final warning. Earth's aggressive behavior, refusal to comply with Council regulations, and continued militarization of forbidden technologies shall not be tolerated. Submit to inspection or face consequences. No name, no warmth, just a cold demand, spit through perfect alien mouths that had never seen a real war, not in generations. For a week, Earth said nothing. The United Terran Directorate held meetings in shadows. News outlets screamed about peace, about diplomacy, about compliance. But the silence from the Directorate said more than words ever could. Then, on the 8th day, Earth responded. And every star listened. The response was delivered not through translators or diplomats, but by Commander Grant Maddox, a scarred veteran of the Martian insurgency, standing alone at the UN astral podium. His voice echoed across every galactic frequency, his face, flesh and steel, broadcast unfiltered. He didn't read from a script. We received your warning. Here's ours. We don't kneel, we don't forget, and we don't forgive threats. He leaned closer to the mic, steel-gray eyes locking with a dozen alien species watching from across the void. From this moment, Earth considers your transmission an act of hostility. You want compliance? Try taking it. He paused, the silence heavy. This is a declaration of war. The feed cut, not jammed, deliberately ended. What followed was chaos. The Council hadn't expected it. Earth was a Tier 2 civilization by their measures. Impressive, yes, but not a threat. Not something they feared. Just something they wanted under control. Like every other planet they'd bullied into submission. But Earth wasn't like the others. Earth remembered its history. Wars fought in trenches, in deserts, in shattered cities and frozen forests. Every generation of Earth had bled to build what stood now, and they weren't about to hand it over to a committee of smug aliens who'd never fired a bullet in anger. The first strike didn't come from the Council. It came from Earth. Within 48 hours, 3 border outposts belonging to the Council's observational command were wiped off the star map. No warning. No prisoners. Coordinated, silent strikes executed with surgical brutality. By the time Council fleets mobilized, Earth's Navy had already vanished. Ghost ships, cloaked drones, war platforms launched from the Kuiper Belt, scattering into deep space. Earth didn't fight like they expected. There were no grand confrontations, no heroic speeches on the bridge. There was only sabotage, subversion, annihilation. And at the center of it all, Commander Maddox, now Supreme Commander, directed the chaos from the UNS Hellstorm, the most powerful dreadnought Earth had ever built. And the Council knew his name. They called him the Butcher of Titan, though no human had ever confirmed what had happened there. Only that a Council fleet of 16 ships disappeared near Saturn's largest moon. Maddox had returned alone. The rest? The Council said it was a communications failure. Everyone else knew the truth. Now the Council was realizing too late that Earth had been preparing. While the aliens debated protocols and trade routes, Earth had been building war machines, training orbital shock divisions, designing AI that could think faster and strike harder than anything the Council had on record. They underestimated Earth. They underestimated humans. And now they were about to learn what that meant. Maddox stood in the war room, arms crossed, jaw tight. The hologram showed Council Fleet Alpha advancing on the Vega line, 12 battlecruisers, 6 destroyers, and a diplomatic escort. "They're bringing ambassadors into a combat zone?" his second-in-command, Harper, asked, scoffing. "Do they think we'll hold back because of that?" Maddox didn't answer. He just stared at the display, jaw grinding slowly. Then he turned, voice cold. "I want their comms jammed. Target their escort ship first, then burn the rest." "But sir..." They sent a threat, Maddox said, voice low. We reply with fire. Outside, in the cold silence of space, Earth's retribution waited like a coiled serpent, and the stars were about to bleed. The UNS Hellstorm moved through the black like a predator, its hull cloaked in advanced magnetic distortion fields, impossible to lock onto by standard galactic sensors. Its engines, near silent in vacuum, made no sound, just cold momentum. Commander Maddox stood at the helm, staring through the reinforced glass at the stars beyond. He didn't speak. He didn't blink much either. His hands, scarred from an explosion in the Martian mines 20 years ago, flexed behind his back. The war was no longer coming. It had already begun. Behind him, the command deck buzzed with quiet intensity. Officers moved fast, but not panicked. They knew what was expected. They'd trained for it. Earth didn't hand out command posts like candy. Every man and woman on the Hellstorm had earned their place with blood, sweat, and decisions that would haunt most people for a lifetime. Sir, Harper called from the console bank. Intercept confirmed. Council Fleet Alpha is 27 minutes out. They're broadcasting again. Let's hear it, Maddox said without turning. The speakers crackled, and then a smooth, rehearsed alien voice filled the bridge. One of the Council's many representatives, this one from the Sereni, a 6-limbed species with translucent skin and an obsession with hierarchy. This is Fleet Alpha, speaking under authority of the Galactic Council. Earth warship Hellstorm, you are ordered to power down weapons and surrender for questioning. Your aggression has been noted and documented. Continued resistance will result in punitive action. The message ended. No emotion, just the same tone they used when scolding lower species for not paying tribute. They didn't understand yet. Send a reply, Maddox said. Yes, sir. What should I transmit? Nothing. Harper looked up. Sir? Maddox turned finally, his face stone. They want a reply. They'll get one in 27 minutes. Not before. He stepped down from the platform, coat flaring behind him, and entered the tactical bay where 24 strike captains stood waiting. These were men who'd commanded orbital assaults, launched deep space kill missions, led suicide squads, and walked away breathing. Some wore medals, some wore burns. None smiled. We're not here to negotiate, Maddox began, voice low and even. We're not here to show restraint. The Council made their position clear. They want Earth broken, submissive. They want us brought to heel like every other world they've stripped and sterilized. He paused, eyes scanning the room. Too bad they knocked on the wrong door. There were no cheers, just silent nods, clenched jaws, and the faint crack of someone squeezing their gloves tight. The Vega line is where we draw the boundary, Maddox continued. This is where we remind the galaxy what Earth is, not a planet of politicians, not a race of thinkers who bend. We are survivors, fighters, builders of destruction when provoked. He gestured to the holomap flickering beside them. Their fleet's faster, bigger, cleaner, but they've never fought us, not really. They've never seen what humans do when cornered. His eyes darkened. They'll learn. Back on the bridge, as the strike captains moved to deploy orders to their own squadrons, Maddox leaned over Harper's shoulder, eyes fixed on the data streams. The Hellstorm wasn't alone. 3 stealth cruisers had already flanked the Council fleet, broadcasting 0 emissions. Drones, silent, small, deadly, were swarming in from the Oort cloud. And a kill satellite, disguised as a decommissioned mining rig, was charging its main railgun. All assets in place, Harper said. We've got 1 shot at this. We won't need 2. Harper hesitated, then added, I don't think they believe we're serious. About the war. Maddox didn't look up. Good. The minutes passed slowly. The kind of slow that makes men grip their weapons tighter. The kind of slow that makes your heartbeat sync with the red blip of an enemy warship on the screen. At precisely the 27-minute mark, Maddox nodded once. "All units, fire!" The response was instant. No countdown, no grand announcement. The satellite fired first. A tungsten slug the size of a van punched through space at Mach 40 and tore clean through the Council's diplomatic vessel, vaporizing it mid-sentence as they attempted another warning transmission. No warning, just silence, then fire. The stealth cruisers lit up next. Particle beams lanced into the Council's flank ships, rupturing hulls, triggering chain explosions as plasma cores vented raw energy into open space. The Hellstorm launched her first salvo, 6 warheads, each programmed to break into dozens of hypersonic darts, shredding shields and splitting cruisers in half. Council Fleet Alpha wasn't ready. They never saw it coming. And Maddox watched every second of it. Council ships scattered. Some tried to retreat. Others returned fire, but they were blind, scrambling. Their formations shattered in moments. Human tactics weren't elegant. They were brutal, feral, unpredictable, designed for one outcome only: devastation. The Council's command ship attempted a last-ditch transmission. It was jammed. Earth didn't care what they had to say anymore. On the Hellstorm's deck, officers reported one Council vessel escaping into subspace. Maddox let it go. "Let them run," he said. "Let them tell the others what they saw." He turned to Harper. "What's the count?" "Council fleet down to 3 partials. Rest destroyed. No human losses." Maddox exhaled. Not in relief, he expected nothing less. It was simply the breath of a man who now knew what came next. "They'll come harder next time," Harper said. "Bigger fleets. Full-scale war." "Good," Maddox said, voice dry. "It'll save us the trip." Across the stars, panic spread. Earth had broken that illusion in a single day, and the galaxy watched. Some races celebrated in secret, worlds long oppressed by Council doctrine, stripped of culture, dignity, or sovereignty. Others feared Earth now, wondering what kind of species would defy the galactic order so openly, so violently. But none understood yet. Not truly. Earth wasn't just rebelling. Earth was hunting, and Maddox had no intention of stopping with one fleet. In a classified bunker beneath the mountains of Patagonia, deep under Earth's crust, a meeting took place. No politicians, just warlords, directors of black programs, leaders of old-world militaries who'd been folded into the Terran Directorate after the unification. Maddox appeared by hollow. His image flickered in the cold light, but his words cut through. "We started this war. We end it on our terms. No retreats, no negotiations. The Council made their threat. Now they get to watch us dismantle their empire piece by piece." "What's the objective?" someone asked. Maddox didn't hesitate. "Victory." There was no need to explain what that meant. It didn't mean peace treaties or council seats. It meant the Council on their knees, or their ashes floating in the dark. The room fell quiet. Then came a question no one wanted to ask, but had to. "What if we lose?" Maddox's face hardened. "Then we make sure they remember what it cost to beat us, and they'll wish they hadn't." Back on the Hellstorm, Maddox watched footage of the Council survivors limping through space, engines sputtering, shields dead. Some were already breaking apart from system damage. And yet, he didn't feel satisfaction. This wasn't about revenge. This was about showing the truth, that humans weren't a species to be managed or tolerated. They were to be feared. He tapped a secure console. A file opened, labeled Operation Iron Gospel. A list of targeted council installations lit the screen: research centers, trade hubs, key communication relays. They weren't just going to break fleets. They were going to shatter the foundation of council dominance, economically, militarily, ideologically. He stared at the top of the list. Veltrix Prime, the Council's Central Intelligence Archive. "Set course," he said coldly. "To Veltrix?" Harper asked, eyes wide. "We'll be deep in Council space. Suicidal." Maddox looked over, the corner of his mouth lifting. Not a smile, but something darker. "They started this war with a warning," he said. "Let's answer it with extinction." The UNS Hellstorm had been in silent warp for 40 hours, coasting through forbidden sectors of Council space that had been blacklisted by every major species. It was dangerous, uncharted, and unpredictable. But that's why Maddox had chosen it. No one expected humans to take the dark route. And that's where humans thrived, in the places others feared. Commander Grant Maddox hadn't slept in over a day. He didn't need to. His mind was sharper in war than in peace. Peace had dulled Earth, nearly killed it. War was clarity. War was purity. War was home. "Status report," he barked as he stepped onto the command deck. "Subspace stealth holding," Harper responded. "No contact with enemy sensors. No anomalies. Our estimated arrival at Veltrix Prime is 8 hours. Maddox nodded. He moved toward the holomap and looked at the looming red dot marked Veltrix Prime, the Council's Central Intelligence and Data Archive. Not just a storage facility. It was their brain. Everything from species histories to surveillance on independent colonies, blackmail dossiers, and war doctrine files were stored there. Earth's war wasn't going to be fought by brute force alone. This strike would be surgical decapitation. "We hit Veltrix, we cripple their coordination," Maddox said, eyes narrowed. "We don't just fight them, we blind them." Harper hesitated. "Sir, the facility is shielded, heavily. It's buried in a lunar crust, surrounded by 4 moons, and they've got over 2,000 defense platforms. It's suicide." Maddox turned to him, cold and calm. "Everything worth doing is—" He walked off the deck. No speeches, no prep rallies, just the silent pressure of knowing what had to be done. And doing it. 3 hours later, in the Hellstorm's black chamber, Maddox met with the Ghost Unit. No uniforms, no medals, just ghosts. These were men pulled from every shadow program Earth had run in the past 40 years. Some weren't even officially alive. Trained in sabotage, zero-G infiltration, orbital collapse, and neural warfare. Their leader, a man named Riker, bald, silent, skin like cracked steel, nodded once as Maddox entered. "This will be our last conversation," Maddox said bluntly. Riker didn't ask why. "You'll breach the outer shell through the maintenance shafts. Use the Havoc seeds. Nothing traceable. Get in, download everything we can, and plant the virus. The exit window will be 90 seconds after the strike begins." Riker just stared at him. Then, "What about extraction?" "You won't be extracted," Maddox said. "You're staying until the core collapses. You knew that when you signed up." Riker nodded once. "About time?" There were no goodbyes. Ghost Unit didn't do farewells. They just vanished into the prep chamber and suited up. Within 20 minutes, they were inside a stealth drop pod, cradled in the Hellstorm's ventral bay, ready to be fired like a bullet at the enemy's skull. Maddox watched the pod seal shut. 13 men. 13 chances to snap the galaxy's spine in one blow. He tapped a code into the terminal. "Pod launch in 30. Harper turned from the command console. "Sir, I need to ask, why now? Why not wait? We're winning the outer battles." "Because those outer battles are distractions," Maddox said without turning. "We destroy Veltrix. We destroy the illusion. They think they can manage us. This proves they can't even see us coming." He paused. "We're not trying to win peace anymore. We're trying to end the game entirely." Harper nodded, though tension knotted in his throat. He wasn't sure where the line was anymore. Maybe Earth had already crossed it. Maybe Maddox had never believed there was a line at all. The strike began with chaos. As the Hellstorm dropped from warp near Veltrix Prime's fourth moon, she didn't appear on sensors. She ripped through them. Her signal disruptors fried every surveillance net in a 1,000-mile radius. The satellites spun into useless fragments as EMP waves rolled out from her hull like sonic shock. 3 Council defense ships immediately moved to intercept, sleek and armed to the teeth. They didn't even get the chance to lock weapons. 2 were vaporized by kinetic slugs from orbital railguns Earth had positioned months ago, long before the war ever began. Covert ops Maddox himself had authorized under the name Project Salted Glass. The 3rd ship tried to run. It didn't make it more than a kilometer before a hyperspectral missile tore through its belly and shredded it into liquid debris. Now came the hammer. From the Hellstorm's belly, the Ghost Unit's pod launched silently. No heat signature, no propulsion trail, just raw velocity and silence. The pod streaked toward the Veltrix crust like a comet. Inside, the team sat wordless, breathing steady, weapons loaded, eyes forward. They didn't need pep talks. They'd all accepted one truth. They weren't making it home. Back on the Hellstorm, Harper watched the feed go dark. "Signal lost," he muttered. "Pod has breached crust, jammed beyond that point." Maddox stood silent. For a moment, the war paused, like even the universe was holding its breath. Inside Veltrix, alarms rang. The Council's inner security was in chaos. Their systems, designed for diplomacy, control, long-term strategy, weren't built for this kind of sudden, savage assault. When the Ghost Unit emerged from the shaft tunnels, they were already inside Level 3, deep in the archival stacks. The guards didn't stand a chance. The ghosts moved like shadows. No noise. No warning. In 7 minutes, they'd reached the inner vaults. And as Riker plugged the seed into the core terminal, his eyes caught the footage. Thousands of files about Earth, its leaders, its people, its psychology, its weaknesses. Everything the Council thought they understood. He smiled. "You don't know a damn thing," he muttered. Then he hit enter. The virus launched. Within seconds, the entire data hive started to collapse. First slowly, files corrupted, terminals crashing, then violently. The AI safeguarding the vaults triggered a failsafe, believing they were under a neural intrusion. It began the purge protocol. And that's when the ghosts detonated the havoc seeds. The entire facility shook. Lights failed. Gravity failed. Heat levels spiked, then dropped as the inner vacuum systems spiraled out of control. And in those final seconds, Riker stood in the wreckage, the virus still eating, and muttered, "Earth sends its regards." Then everything went black. On the Hellstorm, Harper turned to Maddox. "Core collapse confirmed. We lost contact with the ghosts." "They did their job," Maddox said flatly. "Now we do ours." "What's our move?" Maddox walked back to the deck window. He stared at the distant remains of Veltrix Prime as the moons began to shift from the gravitational disruption of the core collapse. "Now," he said, "we start breaking planets." Harper looked at him, eyes narrowing. "Is this still about the Council?" "No," Maddox said, voice a low growl. "This is about Earth's place in the galaxy. This is about making sure the next time anyone out there thinks about threatening us, They remember this day and decide to die quietly instead. He turned to the crew. Set a course for Council Central. You mean the core ring? Harper asked, stunned. We don't have authorization. We don't need it. That's not a battlefield. It's a political sanctuary. Not anymore, Maddox said. Now it's a target. In the Council's inner sanctum, news of Veltrix's fall hit like a solar flare. The high voice collapsed mid-sentence. Panicked councilors screamed for evacuation. Debates were abandoned, protocols thrown out. Whole species were suddenly reconsidering their allegiance. Earth hadn't just retaliated. They'd struck at the Council's brain. And the message was clear. You're not gods, you're not safe, and you're next. The UNS Hellstorm slipped through the dead zone between the shattered remains of Veltrix Prime and the edge of the core ring. The dark matter drives hummed low, barely audible through the hull. Earth's flagship wasn't rushing anymore. It was hunting. Maddox stood alone in the observation chamber. Around him, the stars were still. Cold, uncaring, just like him. He hadn't slept since Veltrix fell. Didn't need to. He didn't dream. The war had burned that out of him long ago. Some men fought for peace. Maddox fought because there was no peace left worth saving. The door slid open. Harper entered, slower than usual. Council Core Ring has begun mass mobilization. 8 carrier-class fleets, 2 dreadnoughts, and at least 4 planetary shield systems coming online. He paused. They've locked down their inner systems. No ships in or out. Maddox didn't look at him. Cowards hide behind walls. Kings die behind them. Harper stepped forward, voice lower. Sir, this isn't like Veltrix. These are their capitals, not soft targets. If we strike now, we're not just killing their command. We're risking the whole spiral falling into chaos. Civil war, species collapse, famine. We're talking billions. Maddox finally turned, eyes steel. They declared war on us when they sent that transmission. They made their choice. We're not here to babysit the galaxy. We're here to win. Harper held his ground. And if we win this way, what kind of future are we leaving behind? Maddox stared at him for a long moment. Not with anger, with something colder. The kind where Earth doesn't get threatened again. Harper exhaled and stepped back. He understood now. Maddox wasn't aiming for justice anymore. He was aiming for dominance. 2 hours later, Earth's Joint Fleet rendezvoused at the edge of the Council Core Ring, a band of 8 capital planets forming the heart of galactic governance. In theory, the ring was a neutral zone, a sanctuary of reason. That's what the Council always claimed. But Earth had seen what lay behind the facade, oppression disguised as diplomacy, control masked as peacekeeping, and arrogance woven into every law they forced others to follow. The ring had always been untouchable. Now it was just next. The Hellstorm's war room lit up with red beacons. Surveillance drones deployed across the outer orbit had already begun mapping planetary defenses. The numbers weren't promising. Shield density is 3 times heavier than Veltrix, the data officer said. No gaps, no blind zones. Atmospheric autocannons online, and their gravity well displacers will block any direct orbital drops. Doesn't matter, Maddox replied. We're not dropping from orbit. The officers exchanged looks. He tapped a console. A schematic of a council trade lane, Route 9, appeared. It was a wormhole corridor used for trade vessels between the agricultural moons and the diplomatic cores. Send a subspace ping through Route 9. Make it look like a damaged freighter. Deploy 20 Hunter-class drones on standby. Harper raised a brow. You think they'll take the bait? I don't care, Maddox said, as long as one of them opens the door. 6 hours later, the door opened. A Council scout vessel exited the wormhole, expecting to find a crippled freighter. Instead, It was swallowed whole by hunter drones before its pilot even knew what hit him. No alarms, no warnings, just sharp metal, precise blades, and silence. The wormhole corridor remained open for 23 seconds before shutting again. And that was enough. In those 23 seconds, Maddox's elite strike unit passed through. The Wolves, a fleet of subspace jump corvettes, each one loaded with planet-breach torpedoes and silent assault teams. They weren't built to conquer. They were built to decapitate. Their mission? Hit the Council's capital planet, Aradex, kill communications, cripple its shield matrix, and if possible, take out the Triumvirate. Aradex wasn't just a capital, it was the capital. Every law the galaxy followed had been signed inside its ivory halls. Every war, every embargo, every sanctioned purge of a rebellious colony. Aradex approved it all. The Wolves broke through its upper orbit like ghosts. Fast, clean, undetected. They deployed torpedoes into the crust. Deep, bunker-busting warheads designed to shake command centers and make panic feel like an earthquake. On the surface, Aradex's citizens screamed, but they didn't fight. They'd never been taught how. Back on the Hellstorm, Harper stared at the live feeds coming in. They're not resisting. The civilians, they're evacuating, not defending. This isn't a battle, it's an execution. Maddox stepped beside him. Then let them run. You're going to flatten Aradex? Maddox didn't blink. I'm going to leave it as a message. He activated the Warpath command. 3 orbital railguns charged in sequence. Nuclear-tipped kinetic rods the length of skyscrapers, were aimed not at military bases but monuments. He was targeting symbols, the halls of order, the treaty bridge, the beacon tower, places that had stood for thousands of years, places that said, "The Council rules here." Maddox sent them to hell in 7 seconds. From orbit, it looked like a meteor storm. Light, fire, dust. And when the smoke cleared, Aradex didn't look like a capital anymore. It looked like another fallen world. Across the galaxy, Council systems spiraled into chaos. Delegations vanished. Allied species broke treaties. Entire militaries refused to deploy. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy realized the truth. Earth wasn't asking for a seat at the table. It was flipping the table and burning the room down. On the planet Daresh, where the Council's second intelligence branch had once flourished, local security forces mutinied and surrendered to an incoming Earth corvette without a single shot fired. On the gas moon, Serevi, 12 Council envoys were executed by their own guards, who claimed they refused to die for a dying empire. And in the diplomatic corps of Taurus, a banner was raised, black, bearing the insignia of Earth's Directorate, and underneath it the words, "We remember Veltrix." But not everyone celebrated. Back on Earth, deep inside the Terran Directorate command bunker in Alaska, not all voices agreed with Maddox's firestorm strategy. Not all leaders wanted total war. Admiral Creed, a war-hardened strategist and old rival of Maddox, sat in the cold room with 3 others, eyes fixed on the data pouring in. "He's winning," one of them whispered. "No," Creed growled. "He's destroying." They all fell silent. Creed leaned forward, staring at a still image of Aradex's destruction. "He's not trying to protect Earth anymore. He's trying to remake the galaxy." Someone asked, "Should we recall him?" Creed looked at them like they'd grown another head. "You recall Maddox," he said, "and he won't come back in cuffs. He'll come back with guns." On the Hellstorm, Maddox stood at the front of the command deck, watching as the core ring's remaining planets began to power down shields, one by one, not because they surrendered, but because their power grids were failing. Veltrix had held the knowledge. Aradex held the will. With both gone, the rest was just collapse. Harper approached him again. "It's over." Maddox shook his head slowly. "Number not yet." Harper swallowed. "Then what's next?" Maddox turned, voice like steel. "We find the last council planet that still thinks they can talk to us." "And?" Maddox's eyes burned. "We show them Earth doesn't talk anymore." Aradex was gone. Not just bombed, not just defeated, erased. From orbit, the capital of the Galactic Council looked like a wounded animal, burning, broken, and twitching in its final moments. Smoke curled into space. The treaty bridge lay in glowing ruins, snapped in half like a spine. The halls of order, once a symbol of stability, was now a black crater, still smoldering days after the railguns had struck. The world would never walk again. But Maddox didn't look away. He stood at the command platform of the UNS Hellstorm, eyes locked on the broken planet like it owed him something, like he was daring it to speak. It didn't. No council broadcasts came through, no pleas, no retaliatory declarations, just silence. Behind him, Harper finally spoke. "We've confirmed it. The last active triumvirate member escaped to Lyrix. They're calling an emergency summit of the remaining allied species, what's left of them." Maddox's voice was razor sharp. "Summit?" "Yes, sir. They're trying to regroup, reorganize, I guess, decide what the future looks like." Maddox turned. "They had their future. We gave it back to them. Burning." He stepped toward the map console and zoomed in on the Lyrix system. It was beautiful. 7 orbiting moons, golden nebulae swirling in the background, and a surface city built atop cliffs made of glass-like stone. Lyrix was ancient, unscarred, one of the last untouched council planets, and now it was hosting the last of the cowards. "They're going to try to reassert control," Harper said. "Spin it as Earth's madness, beg the outer colonies for support, maybe even start talks with the Kralin." Maddox stared at the star map. "We're not giving them the chance." He tapped the console. "Plot a course to Lyrix." Down on Earth, things were different. In Alaska's Directorate Command bunker, the tremors from Maddox's campaign were finally catching up. Reports of mass surrenders were flooding in. Yes, but so were the darker ones. Human officers in council territories executing local officials without trial. Strike teams bombing historical archives. Civilian casualties, millions, in regions that had no military presence. Maddox's war wasn't precision anymore. It was purge. Admiral Creed stared at the table's holomap as another report came in from Darish. A council city wiped out by atmospheric collapse, courtesy of Earth's orbital weather disruptors. He slammed a fist down. "This isn't strategy," he growled. "This is revenge." "It's working," a younger officer muttered from the corner. Creed turned on him. "Is that the standard now? As long as it works?" The room was quiet. Then Creed stood. "Send the order. Lock access to Directorate Command." The others looked up, surprised. "You're going to move against Maddox?" one asked. "I'm not moving against him," Creed said. "I'm going to remind him that Earth still has a soul." The Hellstorm reached Lyrix orbit in just under 12 hours. The Council didn't fight. Their planetary shields powered up, then powered down. It wasn't surrender. It was acceptance. A transmission came through before Earth could even fire a shot. It was audio only. A raspy, exhausted voice. Eshtan, the last surviving member of the Triumvirate. "There is no fight left in us," the alien said. "We see now what humanity has become. You wanted fear, Commander Maddox. You've earned it. You wanted respect. You've stolen it. But if you burn us here too, what's left? What are you trying to build?" Maddox didn't answer. He ended the transmission, then walked down to the Hellstorm's deployment bay. He didn't send a team this time. He went himself. Maddox's dropship descended like a thunderbolt. The skies over Lyrix cracked with sonic booms as his escort fleet broke atmosphere, circling above in silent intimidation. No weapons fired, no resistance. Lyrix had already died. It just hadn't fallen yet. When Maddox stepped onto the marble platform of the summit hall, the air was thick with tension. Alien leaders from a dozen species stood in robes, shaking in silence. Some tried to look dignified, others didn't bother. The smell of fear was universal. Eschaton stood at the center, his once proud frame now hunched, his ceremonial robes torn and frayed. He raised his trembling hands. "What now, human?" Maddox didn't blink. He walked straight up to him and said nothing. Instead, he reached into his coat and placed a data spike on the podium. "This," he said, voice steady, "is a list of every council atrocity Earth has documented over the past century. Forced famines, sterilization policies, black site erasures, genetic tampering, cultural annihilation." The room was still. "You'll transmit this to every system under council influence," Maddox continued. "You'll confess, publicly, under our banner. Every word I recorded will be spoken by your mouth." Eschaton whispered, "They'll tear us apart." "They should." "And if I refuse?" Maddox's eyes didn't flinch. "Then I flatten Lyrix while you're still speaking." Eschaton stared at him, eyes wet with terror. But he knew. Everyone did. This was the price of survival now. Not alliance, not loyalty, not peace. Obedience. The data spike was accepted. Transmission began. Across the galaxy, holoscreens lit up with the Council's own face reading a confession of sins so horrifying, entire colonies rebelled overnight. Old flags were torn down, new banners raised. Earth's banner. The Directorate's black insignia. Maddox didn't smile. He didn't feel pride. This wasn't about pride. It was about control. Hours later, as he stood aboard the Hellstorm once again, looking down at Lyrix, Harper approached. "You did it," he said quietly. "You broke them." Maddox was silent for a moment. Then, "They were already broken. I just removed the lie." Harper nodded slowly. "So, what now?" Maddox didn't answer. Then came the signal. A transmission from Earth, encrypted, top-level clearance. Harper pulled it up. His eyes widened. "It's from Admiral Creed." Maddox turned. "He's locking the Directorate command. He's calling for emergency review. He's accusing you of overreach, of violating Article 9. He's ordering your recall." The deck fell quiet. Maddox said nothing for several seconds. Then, calmly, "Prepare the fleet for return to Earth." Harper looked stunned. "You're going back?" "Of course," Maddox said. "If Creed wants to talk, we'll talk." But something in Maddox's voice didn't sound like he was preparing for peace. And Harper knew it. Earth wasn't just coming back victorious. It was coming home with blood still on its boots. The UNS Hellstorm entered Earth's atmosphere under blackout protocol. No escort, no lights, no public arrival. Not a single welcome transmission from Directorate Command. The silence was louder than any orbital cannon fire Maddox had faced. Inside the warship, the crew moved quieter now. Tension pressed down on every man on board. They'd seen what Commander Maddox had done to the galaxy, and now, they weren't sure what he'd do to Earth. Or worse, what Earth would do to him. Harper stood at the primary display, eyes locked on the string of warnings from Alaska. Command Center status: locked. All external access denied by Admiral Creed. Emergency Civilian Oversight Council activated. Recall order issued. Commander Grant Maddox. He turned to Maddox, who stood silent as ever at the helm. They've declared you rogue, Harper said, voice low. They're calling what happened on Eridex a war crime. Maddox didn't react. Harper pressed, "They're preparing a tribunal. Admiral Creed is gathering the old council. They want you to step down, publicly. Submit to review. They say you're dangerous." Maddox's jaw tensed, eyes locked on Earth's slow spin outside the viewport. "After all we've done," Harper said, "this is how they thank us." "They're not thanking us," Maddox replied coldly. "They're afraid." He stepped away from the glass. They think they can put the fire back in the cage. 3 hours later, Maddox stepped off the Hellstorm and onto Terran soil for the first time in 4 years. No crowds, no banners, only the cold wind of the Alaskan plateau and a dozen black-armored soldiers standing between him and Directorate Command. At the front stood Admiral Creed. Still tall, still iron-backed. His uniform was crisp, but there was a hollowness in his face, like even he knew this confrontation was overdue. Maddox walked until the soldiers raised their weapons. Creed raised a hand, stopping them. "Maddox, Admiral, you're under review for Article 9 violations. You're to surrender your rank and command immediately." Maddox looked past him at the Directorate Tower. "You locked the place down." "Because you gave us no choice." "You think Earth's safe now?" Maddox said, stepping closer. "You think those council species will forget what we did just because we put out a few fires?" Creed didn't flinch. "I think we don't solve tyranny by becoming it." Maddox narrowed his eyes. "I didn't start this war, Creed. I finished it. You burned billions. I protected billions more." Creed stepped forward, jaw tight. "Number, you built an empire with blood and terror, and now you want to come home wearing a crown." Maddox's voice dropped to a growl. "We bled for this planet. We watched men choke in space to keep this place breathing. And now you want to take it back? You want to bury the cost because it makes you uncomfortable?" Creed snapped. "This isn't about comfort. It's about control." Maddox smiled coldly. "Exactly." Back inside Directorate Command, chaos was spreading. Not among the politicians, but among the soldiers. Maddox's name still carried weight. His victories had bought more loyalty than any flag. He didn't need propaganda. He had reputation. Outside the base, across Earth's major defense zones, whispers were turning into rumblings. Some called him a war criminal. Others, a savior. That night, in a secured hangar in East Africa, an encrypted message was broadcast to every branch of the Earth Military Command. The message was short. Maddox's face. One sentence. "The war isn't over until Earth owns the peace." It was all it took. Bases began going dark. Transports lifted off without orders. Subfleets unlinked from EarthNet and rerouted toward Alaska. Creed saw it happening in real time. "He's calling a loyalist uprising," one aide shouted. "No," Creed muttered. "He's calling for a new Earth." Maddox didn't storm the tower. He waited. Let the message spread. Let the weight of what he'd done out there settle on the home front. Let people remember that while Earth had sat behind walls, he had taken the fire to the stars. By sunrise, 4 entire orbital divisions had declared support for Maddox. By noon, 10 more had gone silent, refusing to respond to Creed's command. By nightfall, the outer colonies began broadcasting their allegiance to Maddox, begging him not to surrender. In the depths of Directorate Command, Creed stared at the final report. Maddox has over 50% of Terran military assets under unofficial control. If he marches on command, there will be civil war. He stood slowly. "I need to speak to him. Alone." His officers objected, but he was done hiding behind orders. They met again that night. Inside a neutral zone, a former UN bunker from the pre-unification wars. Just 2 men. No guards, no tech. Stone, steel, silence. Creed entered first, coat flapping in the wind. Maddox stood at the far end, watching the empty walls. "You made yourself a myth," Creed said. "No," Maddox said without turning. "The galaxy made me a monster. I just learned to control it." Creed exhaled, walking closer. "You're not the man I remember. I'm not the man Earth needed during peace. I'm the man it needed during war." Creed's voice cracked just slightly. "What about now? What does it need now?" Maddox finally turned. And for the first time, there was something in his eyes that wasn't fury or resolve. It was conflict. Creed stepped closer. "You don't have to burn it all down, Grant." Maddox looked him in the eye. "I already did." For 10 seconds, neither spoke. Then Creed nodded once. "I won't stand in your way." Maddox didn't nod back. He just walked past him, out of the bunker, and into history. The next day, the Directorate Council was dissolved. Maddox did not seize power with guns. He didn't need to. The people gave it to him. The soldiers cheered. The colonies aligned. Earth didn't elect him. They surrendered to him, willingly. There was no coup. There was only inevitability. And just like that, the war hero who had once answered a threat with fire now ruled the planet that had sent him to burn. The banners changed overnight. Where the Terran Directorate flag once hung, now flew a sharper emblem. Black steel wings surrounding a blood-red circle, the mark of the Sovereign Earth Command. Maddox never gave a speech. He never claimed a throne. He just occupied the silence left behind after the Council collapsed and Earth surrendered to its own fear. There was no formal announcement, no press conference. He simply stepped into the vacuum of leadership, and nobody had the courage to ask him to step back out. In every capital across Earth, from the spires of New Shanghai to the buried metros of free Europa, his image flickered on the hollow screens. Unreadable eyes, voice always clipped, promises never grandiose, just cold, hard truths. "We aren't in peace. We're in control." That was all he said. And that was enough. Within weeks, Earth's military underwent complete restructuring. Old loyalties were burned. New ones were sworn. Every general who hesitated was reassigned or vanished. Officers who had resisted Maddox's wartime orders found themselves posted in dead sectors with no power, no comms, and no command. Civilian oversight councils were quietly disbanded, their archives deleted. No riots broke out, because most of them were already gone by the time the people even knew they existed. By the end of the first month, Earth had become what the Council had always feared it would. A unified species, under one voice, with nothing left to fear, and nothing holding it back. But in the ashes of order, rebellion always flickers. And deep beneath the Atlantic, in an old maintenance level of a decommissioned orbital railgate, it burned quietly. She was no soldier. Not anymore. But Lieutenant Maeva Halden had once served under Maddox in the Martian insurgency. She remembered him before the black coats and the red insignia, before the speeches and strikes. She remembered a man who fought for survival, not for domination. Now he sat on a throne of bones, and she wasn't going to let it stand. Around her, a group of dissidents, former officers, outlaw techs, a few hardened civilians, gathered over flickering terminals, parsing every detail of the Directorate's newest systems. New defense grids, civilian ID algorithms, drone patrol rotations. The Resistance didn't have ships. They didn't have armies. But they had something else. The one weapon Maddox couldn't see coming. They had the truth. Back in the Sovereign Command Tower, Harper walked alongside Maddox, watching as engineers installed new biometric locks and automated defense arrays. "You've stabilized most of the colonies," Harper reported. "Lyra 4 pledged allegiance yesterday, and Titan's population finally stopped protesting the food taxes." Maddox said nothing. He studied the build schematics in front of him with surgical coldness. "But there's something else," Harper added, lowering his voice. "A leak." Maddox's eyes flicked toward him. Harper swallowed. "Old files, video logs from Veltrix, the Ghost Unit's final broadcast. Someone recovered the deleted cache. They're spreading it." "What does it show?" Harper paused. "It shows Riker, saying they were ordered to die. It shows that we pulled the plug before extraction, that you never planned to bring them home." Maddox didn't blink. "I didn't." Harper stared at him. "It's going viral." Maddox turned away. "Let them watch. Let them see what this piece costs." Harper pressed, quieter now. "But they're calling you a murderer, a traitor. Some are saying, you killed your own men." "I gave them victory," Maddox said, jaw clenched, "and history only remembers who wins." But outside the sterile halls of Sovereign Earth, the cracks were forming. The leak was spreading faster than any virus. Across underground networks, deep stream forums, black channels in the asteroid belts, people were listening. Riker's face, Riker's voice, his blood-covered helmet shaking as he shouted into the last uplink. He knew, he always knew. We weren't coming back. Maddox called this sacrifice, but it was a cover-up. They wanted us dead because we knew too much, because we were the only ones who saw the truth. Veltrix wasn't justice, it was cleansing. The words echoed like a hammer against Maddox's pristine armor. In the Atlantic bunker, Maeva watched the playback again, fists clenched. She turned to the others. "We get this into the colonies." "They'll block it," one said. "Not if we go through the old trade relays. They've been decommissioned, but the signal lines still run under the southern ring. We jack in. We loop the signal through all the outer colonies and the trade moons in the Vega corridor." One of the techs nodded. "We can patch it through every non-aligned station." Maeva looked up. "Then we light the fire." 3 days later, chaos exploded across the fringes of Earth's control. Minor colonies began refusing supply shipments. Pirate broadcasts jammed the Sovereign frequency. A destroyer from the 9th Terran Fleet outright defected, jamming Riker's broadcast on loop from its main comms tower. "He left us to die. He burns what he can't control." Maddox watched it all unfold from the war room. He didn't blink. He just stared at the tactical display while red zones began to bloom on Earth's influence map like spreading blood. Harper paced behind him. "If we let this grow, we're going to lose control of the outer systems. People are believing it." "Then we burn the outer systems," Maddox said. Harper stopped. "You're not serious." Maddox turned slowly. "I told you, we're not trying to win a popularity contest. We're securing humanity's place in the galaxy. This isn't about opinion. It's about obedience." Harper's mouth opened, then shut. He had no response. Hours later, Earth deployed Protocol Obsidian, a classified purge command buried deep inside the pre-war Black Archives. It authorized the erasure of any rogue communication network, station, or ship deemed a threat to Terran security. No trials, no warnings, just deletion. Satellites fired on their own colonies. Civilian relays exploded mid-transmission. On Mars outposts, drones marched through settlements, tearing out transmission dishes and torching broadcast towers. Harper watched the reports roll in like a storm. Civilian deaths, unconfirmed. Infrastructure loss, extreme. Rebellion status, silenced. For now, he turned to Maddox. This isn't war anymore. Maddox stared at the screen. Number, it's control. But he didn't see what came next. In the shadows of a mining rig on Callisto, a final hidden signal was sent. A backup archive of Riker's full logs, complete, uncut. Not just the broadcast, the real mission files. Voice logs, tactical recordings, confessions, including Maddox's own intercepted audio file. No extraction. We don't need witnesses. Let their deaths be the fire that cements our narrative. The words would reach every rebel cell in the quadrant, every surviving ghost in exile, every officer with a shred of doubt left in their blood. Maeva Halden listened one last time as the signal went live. Then she looked at her people. This time we don't just expose him. We go back to Earth. Earth's sky was no longer silent. Over the Pacific quadrant, 25 unauthorized ships dropped from subspace, flying low under the old radar net, military grade, stolen or defected, their IDs scrambled, signals encrypted. But Maddox didn't need identification to know who they were. The rebellion had returned, and they'd come armed with more than weapons. They came with proof. In the command tower, red alerts blared across the holoscreens. Civilian channels were jammed. The Sovereign Earth AI scrambled to intercept corrupted signals, but it was already too late. Every terminal, every wall screen, every personal wrist link in Earth's primary sectors suddenly lit up with a name the system didn't recognize. Riker's testimony, uncensored. Then it played. The complete logs, Maddox's voice, the order to leave them behind, surveillance footage of civilians gunned down under Obsidian Protocol, collateral denied, deaths justified as stabilization collateral. And then Riker's final words, whispered through blood and static. He doesn't serve Earth, he rules it. Within 10 minutes, 6 orbital defense stations powered down. 2 refused to fire on the incoming rebel fleet. On Europa, Terran forces mutinied and pledged allegiance to the uprising. Even some high command officers from within the Directorate vanished from their posts. Earth's armor didn't crack. It shattered. In the core of the Sovereign Command Tower, Harper stood in the war room, watching the chaos unfold. His hands were shaking. Maddox, you need to talk to them. The commander stood silent, staring at the fractured map. Rebellion symbols flared red across Earth and the outer colonies. His grip on power, the most brutal and absolute the planet had ever seen, was slipping. He turned slowly to Harper. Send the strike order. Harper's eyes widened. Strike who? Rebel fleet. Every ship over Earth's airspace. I don't care if they're broadcasting truth, lies, or peace proposals. Wipe them out. Harper didn't move. I said, no. The room froze. Maddox stepped closer. What did you say? Harper's voice was quiet, measured, but the fear was gone. I won't follow that order. You swore loyalty. I swore to defend Earth, not burn it just to keep you on a throne made of silence. Maddox's face twitched, just barely, a fracture in the stone. Then he spoke, quieter than ever. Then you've chosen your side. I have, Harper said, and I'm not alone. Outside, the UNS Hellstorm, still parked in low orbit, came alive. Not under Maddox's hand. Its captain, once a loyal student of Maddox's military doctrine, had received the full broadcast, the logs, the truth, the betrayal. He made the call himself. The flagship that had once led Earth's vengeance campaign began turning its guns toward Earth itself. A silent warning. Step down, or we finish this the hard way. In the Atlantic rebel ship, Nadir, Maeva Halden watched the signal lock as Earth's defense systems stuttered, then backed off. The mutiny had worked. She turned to her crew. "We land now." They dropped into the no-fly zone above Alaska, bypassed outer defenses, and crashed into Sovereign Tower's perimeter in a thunderstorm of scorched metal and EMP flares. Doors blew open, rebels stormed in, but they didn't fire. They didn't need to. Half the Sovereign troops dropped their weapons when they saw who led the charge. The name on Maeva's chest plate. Halden. A name no one had spoken in 4 years. One Maddox had buried along with every other voice of dissent. Now it was marching through the front gates. Maddox watched from the tower's upper balcony as the perimeter collapsed. He didn't move. Didn't call for backup. Didn't shout orders. He knew it was over. He walked into the center of the command floor, staring at the holographic globe of Earth, his Earth, that now pulsed with flickering rebellion. Then the doors opened. Maeva stood at the threshold. She wasn't dressed like a soldier. No medals, no armor, just a dark coat, soaked in rain, and a glare that cut through the steel. The same woman who once stood beside him on Martian soil, bleeding and swearing that Earth would never fall again. Now she looked at him like he was the very thing she swore to fight. Maddox didn't blink. "So," he said, "you made it home." She stepped in. "You took home and turned it into a weapon." He tilted his head. "You think I wanted this? You think I liked sending Riker to die? You think I liked sacrificing men who would have followed me to hell?" Maeva didn't answer. Maddox stepped forward, voice cold, clipped, but cracked around the edges. "I didn't become this because I wanted to rule. I became this because I was the only one who had the spine to protect Earth when everyone else wanted to negotiate with the galaxy." Maeva stared at him. "You didn't protect Earth. You remade it in your image, and now it's falling apart." "I kept it alive," he growled. "At any cost." "At every cost," she snapped. "You broke the galaxy, and now you've broken us too." They stared at each other, frozen in time. Thunder cracked above them. The walls shook as rebel forces seized the upper levels. Maddox's jaw tensed. "I could kill you right now." Maeva didn't flinch. "Try." But he didn't move. Because somewhere deep inside, even he knew. She was already the one with the weapon. The truth. And that was the one thing he couldn't shoot. He walked slowly toward the window, looking out at the falling rain and the glowing skyline. The rebellion had not come with missiles. It had come with memories. And Earth, tired of violence, had finally remembered what it meant to choose. "You're here to arrest me?" he said softly. Maeva lowered her eyes. "No." "Then what?" "To end this, with dignity, before someone else does it with your blood." A long silence. Then Maddox turned back to her. Something in his face was finally tired. Not defeated, but tired. "Dignity?" He repeated it like it was a word from a foreign language. "I left that on Titan." He walked to the command console, slowly, entered a key code. The holograms vanished, all security systems powered down. No fight, no resistance, just surrender. He looked at her. "It ends here, then." Maeva nodded. "Yeah, it ends here." 2 days later, Grant Maddox stood before the Terran Council, reinstated, reformed, and now built on open charter law. Civilian-led, transparent, watching him like hawks over a battlefield. He didn't argue, didn't plead. He just stood. When asked if he had anything to say in his defense, he simply said, "I did what I thought Earth needed. I was wrong." The tribunal didn't sentence him to death. They didn't make him a martyr. They sentenced him to exile, stripped of rank, identity, authority. No longer a symbol, no longer a commander, just a man in a shadow. Some said it was mercy, others said it was justice. Only Maddox knew it was both. He left Earth in silence, no ship, no escort, just a one-man transport to the outer rim where no council or fleet or banner could follow. He never looked back. Years later, the galaxy remembered the war. They remembered the flames, the rebellion, the trials. Some called Maddox a monster, others a savior. But history never agreed. Because that's what war does. It leaves truth buried in the ash and lets the survivors argue about what it meant. And somewhere in the void, a scarred man drifted quietly between stars. No rank, no flag, only memory, and the knowledge that once, when the galaxy threatened Earth, Earth replied,